Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of our podcast, which we also videotape. It's called Garner Station, put on by the town of Garner. And I'm your host today. I'm Rick Mercier, work as the communications manager for the town. And today we are so honored to have with us the mayor himself, Mayor Ken Marshburn. And we're going to do something a little special today. We're going to kind of do like a state of the town type interview. And we're going to try to cover a lot of ground. We realized, the mayor and I did, as we got into this, that there really so much happened last year. And, a few things sort of dominated a lot of our mental energy and everything, but really so much happened. So we're going to talk about some of those things and maybe look forward to what we can expect this year too. So, Mr. Mayor, thank you for making time for us. Let's jump right in. And do you want to greet our viewers and our listeners?
Sure, Rick. I really appreciate the opportunity to use this forum to talk to our citizens. Many of them will be, I'm sure, Garner residents, but I'm sure there will be people that will eventually watch this that are people who are not actually residents of town, but they live in close proximity, and I'm sure they have an interest in what's going on in our area. So, I'm excited about using this as sort of a different forum for a State of the Town address. We hope and think that it'll be interesting and informative, and we'll do our best to make it so. And I want to thank these guys who are working behind the scenes to make this happen. So interested and quite excited about the opportunity to answer some questions and to share information. So thank you, sir.
Yes. So let's, some of the highlights from 2021. We'll do a deeper dive on several of these, but kind of what, if you were, ticking off the list of 4 or 5 of the big things that happened last year, what would you note?
Well, surely the Bond Referendum that the town of Garner passed has to be high on the list. It's certainly one that comes to my mind, and I'm so excited that our citizens approved that. And we can talk about that a little later. Also, we opened our Garner Recreation Center. That's been something that's been pending for some time, and so excited to see that open. And again, it's a great addition to our town and a great facility. Something that's a little ways out is a new VA outpatient clinic. Sometime earlier in the year, we got some contact about the interest of the VA in building a clinic here, and we're so excited that that's been basically approved. We don't know exactly when construction will start, but that's going to help any number of our veterans, both who live here in Garner and those who live in some surrounding areas like Johnson County, and put those facilities closer by to many. And also, it will provide obviously some good jobs. The federal government, the VA coming to our area. So that's another highlight. And then I would be remiss if I didn't mention some moves on our staff. Joe Benz, who was our police chief, retired, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a little bit. But those were some of the highlights that I had mentioned. I probably have missed some. I'm trying to refer to different notes along the way. But you prompt me if there's some that I should have covered.
Sure. Well, let's, the Bond referendum was so huge, and that will drive a lot of what happens in the future in Garner in terms of planning for our growth, building out some of the infrastructure, and guaranteeing that we can maintain our level of services and the great quality of life that brings people here and makes people want to stay here for generations sometimes. So the bond referendum, we had 4 questions. One was on parks and recreation, one was street and sidewalks, stormwater, and then the last one was public safety and services facilities, which, as we've said, is really just a fancy way to say a new fire station for a growing part of town. So what do you, those questions all passed by a really large margin. What do you think that tells us from the voters?
Well, amongst other things, Rick, I think it says that the voters understood what the bond questions were, and I think they felt that there was a need for us to take these actions. Garner is obviously a growing town, and as towns grow, As you need to continue to expand your services, there's no easy way to do that, and so it usually costs more money, and we believe bond referendums are a good way to do that. And so I would say on behalf of our town council and their local government that we are sensitive to the fact that we need to be physically responsible, and I think our town hopefully sees our town government that way. And so there was a note in some of the literature that we sent out that makes, I think, a good point, and basically it says the bonds are about funding Garner's future. They're also about serving critical needs of a growing community, and so it's prudent for us to propose that that's what these bonds will do. So as you noted, we can talk a little bit more about the individual ones, but all of the areas that they cover are crucial areas that need some attention.
Yeah, and so as we said, the one is basically to build a new fire station in a growing part of town, kind of down 401 area toward 1010. Stormwater is somewhat self-explanatory, well, in the sense that we have some aging stormwater infrastructure that we will need to upgrade.
Exactly.
How about the like the parks and recreational bonds and then the street and sidewalk bonds? We had a special council meeting yesterday, and the council and you and staff kind of went into a little more detail about some of that stuff. Do you want to talk about those two in particular, since those are the ones that probably listeners want and maybe need to hear more about?
Sure. I do want to make just one point about the public safety bonds, and that is that the facility that'll be built will be done in conjunction with Wake County EMS services, and so that'll be a shared facility, and that'll offset some of the expense of that. So that was, I think, a good partnership that will help us do that. When it comes to the park and recreation bonds, most of our citizens know that we purchased two nice park properties, or potential park properties. That's what we call the Jurgen property and also the Meadowbrook property. As it relates to the Jurgen property, we see that as probably one that's going to feature multi-purpose athletic fields, and of course a lot of other things. The Meadowbrook property, still some planning and phasing to do there. There's some that we're working on sort of behind the scenes. We've engaged a consultant who is working with us and helping with those. We're probably not going to have enough money in this bond to build them out completely. So we're talking about phasing of both of those properties, which will allow us to go ahead and get a master plan in place and go ahead and begin some of the work, but the build out itself is going to take some time. That's an area that our town, I think, has indicated they like good parks. Often think of Lake Benson, which a previous council created a number of years ago, and we've had just a lot of use of that, and White Deer Park as well. So we think that these two new parks will certainly fill a need that we have, and the citizens will be appreciative of those. One of those will probably have obviously more of a focus as a passive park, and perhaps the other more of a recreational park as well.
Great. And the street and sidewalk bonds, I mean, one of the big projects, and we talked about this as we were reaching out to citizens before the vote, is some work to widen Jones Sausage Road, continuing the widening on the portion north of Garner, or north of East Garner Road, that's right, going out toward 40 and the interchange. So that's one thing, but there's there's another, other opportunities will arise, plus there's the whole sidewalks piece of that.
You're exactly right, and the area that you mentioned is certainly a key focus. We've needed to do some work there on the Jones Sausage Road area, and it's going to help to widen that. While it's not a part of this bond referendum, many people know there's eventually a plan to extend Jones Sausage Road on across actually to Highway 70 and beyond. We're not there yet, but this will give us a good start. And as we're going into downtown and the road work there, as you go into the recreation center, and some sidewalks in that area, and some on Van Dor Springs Road. We're in the process of building one that's been long delayed over there. So these bonds are going to allow us to build more sidewalks. Citizens have indicated that they like the mobility and the walkability that it makes for our town, and obviously in some of the older sections of our town, sidewalks weren't required back when developers were building in those days. So we're catching up to some extent in that regard. But that's a very important part of our bond program, and will really help us to make some good progress in our roads and sidewalks. I don't mean to give the impression that we will be able to do major road building. Obviously, most of that is done by North Carolina Department of Transportation. But where we can, and also, of course, to do maintenance of our road, all of those things are important to a town that's growing.
And one thing that came up during the 2013 bond program was greenways, and in particular a way to connect some of those neighborhoods down Buffalo Road to our premier parks, White Deer and Lake Benson Park, and that project had to get shelved, couldn't get completed with the 2013 bond program. Is that something we might look at in the new bonds that were?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're exactly right. As we looked at the options of that, that became a rather expensive proposal to get that greenway work there over to our two parks. And so we're sensitive to the need to do that, and we're committed with this new bond program, I think, to resolve that in terms of what the route that will take and complete that portion of it. That's one of the things that still has to be designed, and some other work has to be done. But we certainly expect to be able to get those citizens in that area over there connected, which will be a big help to them as well, and it'll help expand our greenway system for sure.
Yeah, and so we are pretty much wrapping up the 2013 bond program. It's been we've done a lot of major projects. We built this building, right? This new town hall, which is not so new anymore. Do you want to name some of the other major things that were part of that? Because I think maybe voters need to be reminded of kind of what we got last time.
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned, this nice facility that we're in today has certainly served the town well and will into the future, even though it's already getting a little crowded. So we'll look at ways, and the building was built so that there can be some expansion. But just across the way from us, of course, is I call it a new police headquarters. Obviously, it was a building that we'd purchased that we were able to renovate and moved our police department into that. I think it's serving our police department very well, and so that was a part of the bonds as well. I should also mention that we were able to build a couple of dog parks. Our dog lovers seem to appreciate that. One over in Lake Benson Park, and then one over at in the north side of town, close to the senior center. Actually, is a good location over there. So that was another project that we were able to complete. Well, the rec center. Excuse me. Yes, we were able to build that, and I hope many of our citizens are becoming more aware of that. It hasn't been open that long, but it's a great facility. I won't try to describe it all. It's got 3 high school sized gymnasiums in it. It has a nice walking, running track. I can testify to the fact that I've used that when the wintertime comes. I'm somewhat of a jogger, so when the weather gets real cold, I like to come inside, and so I've been over there running. It's a 1/9 of a mile track over there that is good for walking or for running, and of course it has a lot of other good space over there, so I encourage our citizens to come over and check that out as well. All of these things, I think, just add to the quality of life, and so hopefully the citizens are satisfied with the fact that the bond money that they approved back in 2013 was used for the purposes we indicated, and so now we see the results of that, and certainly that will be true in a few years with the current bond program that we just passed.
And I guess residents might wonder, well, how soon will we start seeing some of this new stuff getting built? But of course, things take time.
It takes time. You're right. You're right. And it'll be a little while, Rick. Obviously, we're in some of the planning stages, and even after you plan, there's design things that have to be done, engineering stuff. So obviously, we're in the early portion of 2022. So it'll take a little while for those things to come to fruition, but we are actively engaged and working on that. In fact, our council is going to have we usually try to have an annual retreat, and so we'll be having one in mid-February, I believe it is, and we'll be spending some time talking some about that and having several sessions, but there's sort of a master plan in place, and I'll be able to talk more about that as things unfold and get a little further down the road.
And as we said, some of the parkland development work is the design phase of
Yes.
it is already underway. Design work on the Jones Sausage Road widening is underway.
That's right. Yep.
But, things do move kind of slowly, especially those really, really big projects like that.
Well, you're exactly right, and I know transportation has interested a lot of people, and that's a classic example that building roads takes time, and so but yeah. So we understand the citizens want to see things move along as quickly as possible, and certainly we want that to happen as well. So there won't be any foot dragging from the standpoint of I think their town government, but I think most people understand it. It'll take a while, but they'll start seeing some of the results of that in due time, and we're excited about some of the things it's going to allow us to do for sure.
Let's turn to economic development because things have seemed pretty irregular, unusual, obviously, because of the pandemic and everything, but there's really been so much happening here.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about some of those highlights?
Sure.
You did mention the VA outpatient clinic, but there's that and some other things too.
Yep, and I was going to start with that one. So, it's going to be down at the corner of 50 and Rand Road, and as we've noted, that's going to be a big addition to our town, and our veterans will certainly benefit from that. I should mention that we're starting to see some movement in the life science areas. Out on Rayner Road, there's a life science building that's going to be constructed out there, and we think that construction will begin fairly soon. Closer into town, in the old Kmart building over on 401, that's fairly recent information, but that's going to be developed as a life science space as well. And so those are two good examples of Garner moving more into that arena. We're excited. It helps us diversify our economy. And of course, as we know, life sciences usually bring good paying jobs to our area. So it'll be good for our economy for sure. Something, again, that's fairly new is something called Launch Garner, which was started fairly recently. And part of that is it offers free instruction and mentoring for local small business owners, and I'll just read this, prospective entrepreneurs. The Garner Economic Development Corporation, in partnership with Wake Tech, have announced recently a new scholarship to be endowed by the Garner Economic Development Corporation, and this will provide some free rides for local high school graduates to attend Wake Tech. So, I see that as it's a great investment in our young people, and obviously they are our future. So, again, and recently there was a graduation I was privileged to attend of some of these entrepreneurs and having them share some of the plans that they have and the program that they went through, and there was a graduation at the end of that. So, I think it's just great that our town is diversifying more in its economic development. That's been part of our past, and I think it'll be certainly an important part of our future as well.
And yeah, I mean, I really like the fact that, our economic development department, Joe Stallings, he and his team, they do so much, but it's not just all about luring the big employers or, building a lot of new industrial space or the life science space as we have. I mean, all of that's exciting. But there's also this other piece of, nurturing small local business and
Exactly.
and then, helping to nurture and foster our future workforce with, with this scholarship endowment.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and I'd certainly like to give Joe Stallings credit. He served us well, this town well, as our economic development director, and he's been very proactive, in some of the places where businesses have moved out and there are empty storefronts. He's worked hard to recruit other businesses, and we've certainly had some success at that as well. And of course, our Greenfield Park Just recently, we approved a new building there. It's either a warehouse space or some industrial space. And so some of these areas that have been part of our economic base all along, like you said, sometimes the big new things coming in get all the attention. But he's worked steadily along to work on having infill space in places like that. So that's another park that's been around a while, but it's served us well. And it's still having some new buildings added out there as well.
So, somewhat related to economic development and quality of life and making Garner a more exciting and interesting place to live is all the stuff happening in our historic downtown. We talked briefly about, well, you talked a bit about the recreation center, which is downtown, and bringing, more foot traffic to downtown. But there's some other things that have happened in the past year and that are going to continue. We'll continue to see, movement on some of these things this year and beyond.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for asking. You're exactly right. Again, the rec center is a very visible kind of construction there, and already talked about the way it is bringing foot traffic down there, and it's going to serve well our athletic needs. But it also has some educational space and other things that can have multi-purpose use. So that's a nice thing. The council also has selected the developer for a public-private partnership on a piece of town-owned property that's right there adjacent to the rec center. And so this is going to be unique. It's a multi-story building that will offer retail on the ground floor and some residential units above. And it's slated to have what's called tabletop parking, which will be unique to that area. And so the council has also approved some infill residential development in that area of town. So another illustration of that's what making that area grow. Also, I should mention that it's becoming more of a thriving commercial district. A lot of people don't know, but a distillery just opened that in 2021. It's an event space, and also it's an actual distillery and a tasting room. And so we expect more to come in the coming year, and as other businesses we think will see our downtown as a place that they will want to consider relocating to. And then certainly it's fairly fresh on the minds of a lot of people. The downtown area, we had the Garner night markets, and we think those they were well attended. People came to the area, had a lot of vendors came down there, food trucks and the whole bit. A lot of community gathering down there, and so that mix of things brought in people not only of our citizens, but people from around the area, from different areas of the Triangle. So we hope that'll continue. We think and expect that it will. And so as the weather warms up, we'll come back to those things. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about public art in that area down there. If folks haven't been down there recently, they should take in the brand new mural, is that the way you say it, that celebrates the contributions of African Americans. Nicely done. Many people are familiar, I guess, with the mural there on the Full Bloom building, but this is a new one, just completed, I think, within the last, couple months, 2 or 3 months or so?
In the fall. Where were we?
Yeah.
Back in the fall.
Very recent. And in addition to that, of course, we have some homegrown artists right here in our town, some that I didn't know about. And by the way, our own town manager's wife is quite an artist, and she's displayed some of her arts around. But we were excited to see that the recent Art Around Town initiative displayed a lot of paintings by our local artists. This was done mainly in the downtown area, but it was spread in other places. I saw a rendition or two out at our parks, out at Lake Benson Park and other places. So gave our artists some good exposure and reminded our citizens that there is a strong local artist component while it's sort of headquartered in the downtown area, but it's adding to the aesthetics of our town, and I'm pretty excited to see that happen for sure.
And that new mural is on the side of the Locks Naturals and More business,
Yes.
which is I guess that's the corner of Main and Random Mill.
Yes, thank you
If
for.
you go down there, that's where that new distillery space is as well. That's not right on Main Street, but folks will find that just kind of tucked in the back there, and
Sort of just right behind it or beyond it there, I believe. So thank you for noting that that location for sure.
Obviously, I say obviously because I think you can see it when you're out around town and driving around and perhaps in a little more traffic these days. But we have had obviously some residential development in different parts of town, a lot of it concentrated in sort of one area, but
Yeah.
other spots around Garner as well. You want to talk
Yeah,
about that?
yeah. You're right. I think, the development is occurring basically in what I call the sort of the southern perimeter of our town, southern and eastern, I guess you'd say, and some of it you can identify it by the two new schools that are down in the area, the South Garner High School and also the Bryan Road School. There have been a number of developments there. I'll mention the names of those in just a minute. But also, in other areas of town as well, not too far from where I live, are the new townhomes. I think they're called the Minglewood townhomes right off of Avesboro Road. But some others out in the south area are Oak Park, Avenues at White Oak, and the Grove at White Oak, Ridgemore, and Harper's Landing. So how many did I name? 4 or 5 right there.
Several. And if you
Yeah.
go down that way, you'll see a lot of construction activity. I
You
know
really
that.
will. Yeah, that's been a growth area. And so then more in town over on Buffalo Road, there's Buffalo Grove that's going over there. Auburn Village over here, close to Auburn Road. And of course, I already mentioned the townhouses at Minglewood, right here off of Avesboro Road. So yeah, that's all a sign, obviously, of the growth that is coming to Wake County, but also is coming to our town. I think we all agree that Garner was slower to grow than some of our municipalities in Wake County. So we're seeing a lot of that growth come our way, and we're trying to plan for that and prepare for that. By some estimates, there's an indication that maybe we grew as much as 5% in population in the past year, and wouldn't doubt that that's probably an accurate figure since you see that by the amount of housing. And I think it's easy to estimate that our population is probably well over 33,000. We used to have this ongoing little thing with, I guess it was Holly Springs and some of the other towns, like, okay, whose population is bigger? But Garner is certainly seeing some of the growth, and I think it's a good and a positive thing. Growth brings its own challenges, obviously, but it's natural for a town to grow, and I think people are discovering us, and we're going to do all we can to make sure that the growth is leveraged, and that we do all we can to make sure that our quality of services remains as our citizens here expect it to be.
And speaking of services, one of the essential services that a municipality provides is, your first responders, your police, fire, EMS. We talked about, fire and EMS, and thank you for adding the fact that that's going to be a fire and EMS station, that new facility. But there was some big news for a couple of our first responder agencies this past year. You want to talk about those?
Thank you for asking. I surely do. Well, Garner Fire and Rescue has recently earned its national accreditation. That's something they have been working on for several years, and I think it speaks well of their leadership and their efforts to earn this distinction. I was pleased to be there when the presentation was made to them. It's been a long time coming, and so it speaks well for them and their hard work in doing that. And we anticipate that they probably, like our police department, will that'll be the first step in ongoing reaccreditation. But our police department just received its 9th reaccreditation, which past leadership in the police department obviously started that, and subsequent leadership has carried that on. And so again, that's something that speaks well for the police department. I'm proud of both of those departments. I should mention, obviously, that Joe Benz, who came up through the ranks and worked for a number of years and then was promoted to chief, he served our town well, but he recently retired. And so we wish Joe well. He served, I think, for some 30 years probably there. And so we appreciate certainly all the contributions that he made. But to replace Joe, a decision was made recently out of a number of applicants to name Lori Smith as our new police chief. Again, Laura's an example of a person who's worked in the department for a number of years. She's earned her spurs, I guess you could say. She certainly is a very credentialed person, and so we're excited to note that she's the first female chief in our town, and so kudos to Chief Smith, and we look for her to do great things with that department. She's well known by the staff there, and well respected, and well known by our citizens. She's a person who grew up in the town. She obviously knows the town well, and so we think that she's going to be a very good chief, and hopefully for some years to come.
Yeah, those are all really notable things that happened in the past year. Of course, COVID, we continually come back to that, despite all the great things that happen, that is sort of the cloud that continues to sort of hover. And it put a damper on some things, but still, despite that, some things, we were able to do a lot of things this year with the community despite COVID, and had some good successes with some community involvement with some of our things. You want to talk about those?
Sure, I do. And actually, before I jump into that, I meant to say this a little earlier, but you're exactly right. I mean, from the year I became mayor, COVID became sort of the dominant factor that impacted us all, and some people in more difficult ways than others. And so I don't mind saying to our citizens that COVID is there. It's with us. Some variants of it apparently going to be with us for some time to come. And so I encourage all of our citizens to listen to the good medical information that they received, and I encourage people to get vaccinated. From all I know and understand, I think that's one of the best ways to deal with that. Folks seem to have differing views about it, but certainly my wife and my family and I are fully vaccinated. I think more of our citizens have gone that route, and I think that's the proper thing to do. And so there's certainly any number of places in Wake County to be tested. And with the spike that we've seen in recent times, I just would encourage all of our folks to take that action and to go ahead and get vaccinated. We even hear from our medical facilities about the obviously the increasing patient load that they have and the difficulties they have. But at any rate, as you mentioned, Rick, in spite of that, there were a number of things that happened over the last year that we were able to do. Litter is an ongoing problem that we hear from certain of our citizens about. And so during the past year, we had, I think it was over 120 volunteers who came together over time and cleaned up some 11 miles of our roadway, which obviously makes a big difference in the beautification of our town. And so we're very appreciative of those kinds of efforts. One of the things that maybe some folks haven't heard about, but we did create a Juneteenth committee, which is becoming active. It's a combination of some residents and town staff and even some elected officials. They focused on educational activities last year, and they hope to expand the scope of their work to have in-person events to make this to go with the Juneteenth holiday, which has been declared as a holiday. So if you want to know more about that, by the way, I have a website here, or a site that's GarnerJuneteenth.com, and you can learn more about what that committee is doing and ways you can get involved. We mentioned our police department for other reasons, but they started something perhaps under the previous chief, and it's been ongoing, even though COVID has stymied some of that. But I know it as, I guess, barbershop rap sessions, I believe, where they go into to barbershops and have conversations with, many times, some of the young teenage guys who will come there. I had a chance to attend one of those several months ago, and was very impressed with the conversation and the way it was structured, and was a very good thing, I believe. Also, the police department gets credit for something called PAL, which is the Police Athletics and Activities League. They've been very active in our elementary and our middle schools, and so they have been strong now for, I guess, over a decade. And many of our citizens have heard of them, and if you want to know more about them, you can contact the police department. But those are just a few of some of the community-related things that are ongoing, and we expect more of those to continue to occur as we move forward.
And, in terms of kind of things getting a little more back to normal and stops and starts and, then maybe one step forward, one step back with
Yeah.
COVID and the variants. The Parks, Recreation and Cultural Resources Department did have a chance to get some things kind of up and going again. I think most notably maybe the July 3rd celebration.
Yeah.
So there was that. Then, and maybe there are a couple other things that we were able to start doing again,
Yes.
and hope to build on that momentum as hopefully Omicron subsides.
Well, you're exactly right. Yeah, and thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, and I give Parks and Rec a lot of credit. They were active in spite of those things. So to sort of get certainly the July 3rd, which is a much loved event and a well attended year after year, we obviously had to cancel that for 1 year. We brought it back. Yeah, we brought it back this year under their leadership. They did a good job, and so that was very well attended. Also, the GPAC, the programming there and the live entertainers they bring there had to cease during COVID, but they were able to do some streaming of some presentations. And more recently, they've been able to bring in some live artists and people. So we hope that will continue. It's a place that I really like to attend. We've had some very good entertainers to come there. And then something that a lot of people may not know about, and certainly you're aware of, is the Garner History Museum at the restored historic Depo. I commend our Garner Historical Society. I believe that's the right designation for them. They were instrumental in pushing the town to move in this direction, and so we arranged to have that train car moved over there, and the depot there on Pearl Street, they're up and running. I'm not sure exactly what their hours are, but you can check and see. This is all done by volunteers in terms of the opening of it and getting a chance to tour that facility.
They are on Facebook. You can look up Garner Area Historical Society.
I had they just sort of formally opened. What about? I can't remember.
We had we had the grand opening ceremony just prior to Thanksgiving, didn't we? Garner Area Historical Society.org. Okay. All right. Well, that's a lot, but
Sure,
you can look them up that way and learn more about the museum and the organization.
Okay.
Saturday 11 a.m. to 2 and Wednesday 11 a.m. to 2. Again, with the caveat that might be a little different now with the spike in Omicron
I don't know if there's
cases.
a phone number that can be called in advance before you go, but even if they're not open, just come on down to that section of town. If you haven't been there recently, you can see it from the outside and just walk on down, down Main Street there and be in our downtown area easily. So I should also mention, this is a little bit different, but, we celebrated our first Olympic gold medal winner this year.
That's right.
A young man by the name of Randolph Ross, and we brought him in and gave him a key to the city. We felt like that he represented our town well, and so we were excited to have him. He's a terrific young man. It was a pleasure to meet him. And we hope that he'll be able to compete maybe in future Olympics, and maybe, who knows, might bring home some more medals. But very talented young man, and so we're proud of him. I should also mention, let me see, that since we are not that far removed, Rick, from Christmas, that our Parks and Rec department get credit for this year. We sort of touted a new event called a holiday block party. I was out of town actually the weekend it occurred, but I understand it was well attended. Somebody told me there was a train down there and some other things. And of course, we had the lighting of the Christmas tree prior to that, but they get a lot of credit for that. And this year, we were able to bring back the Christmas parade due to some volunteer persons and one of our council members who took the lead in that. And so we're pleased to be able to do that. It was a shorter parade, but I think it worked out very well. So those are all some things that Parks and Rec have led us in.
Yeah. And also on the, before we move on to other things, kind of on the parks themed, we did make a parkland purchase back in,
That's
well, it
right.
was I don't know if it was in the summer, fall.
Yep.
It was, I think it's referred to as the bowling property, but it's some open space and wetlands property.
Exactly. 86 acres of undeveloped wetlands and open space for future public access. So, yeah, that was a purchase that we were helped. It was sort of a partnership with the city of Raleigh, even though Garner basically is the owner of the property. And so, in time, while there will be limit to how much we can develop that, it certainly will be. It's a nice addition to our parklands in general. So I'm glad that you mentioned that.
And another partner in that purchase was a nonprofit called the Conservation Fund.
That's right. That's the term I was looking for there.
So,
Sure enough,
the
yeah.
town was able to leverage some of its funds to be able to make a bigger purchase to
Absolutely.
protect those wetlands, protect our drinking water resources.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah, I've had a chance.
maybe be able to use that space a little bit for greenway development.
Yeah, we think so, or some trails out there. Like I said, because of the type of land that it is, there's some limitations on its use. But we think that yeah, can be some trails put out there eventually that we can use. One other thing that maybe you were going to ask me about, but at any rate, I want to note it while it's fresh on my mind. This this very facility that we're seated in here for this podcast, we were able to have a ceremony and honor our most recent mayor, Ronnie Williams, our former mayor. We have now named this the Ronnie S. Williams Council Chamber in honor and memory of his many years of service. And we wanted to recognize that and had a nice unveiling ceremony. And many of his family members were able to come and be a part of that. And so I'm pleased that this council was interested in doing that. And so it now bears his name, and that'll be a strong remembrance for many years to come.
And Mayor Williams was a Vietnam veteran, and that kind of brings us to another thing that we wanted to make sure we let listeners know about. This is something that we had hoped to maybe have in Garner a couple years ago, and then again last year, but both years COVID sidetracked those plans. But there's something we hope coming out to Lake Benson Park this spring. Do you want to?
Yes, thank you for leading me into that. Yeah, out at our Lake Benson Park, we're going to host the Wall That Heals, which is it's a 3/4 size replica of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. that I've had the privilege of seeing on several occasions. So this has been hosted by a number of towns in North Carolina, and as you said, we were slated to host it the previous year, but COVID again postponed that. So in late March of this year, that's when it's coming to town. Should mention Tim Stevens, a local citizen that most of you know has been very instrumental in bringing this to our town, or helping bring it to our town. And there are a number of volunteers that he's already recruited to help with the process. I think it's something that'll be open probably 24 hours a day. Many of our Vietnam veterans who are familiar with it have talked about sort of the emotional experience that they get and the healing that comes in seeing that. And so we're pleased as a town to host that. We think most all of our citizens want to go and see this and view this. And we anticipate that people will come from faraway areas around to be a part of that as well. So thank you for reminding us of that. That'll be an important part of our early spring, I guess.
Yep. I think that the exact dates on that are March 31st to April 3rd. So it travels to about 20 or so cities per year.
Okay.
Each city, town, city, whatever, gets it for 3-4 days. And so
Yes.
there's the main thing, of course, is that replica 3/4 size of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. And it's pretty impressive. It looks very much like the one in Washington, D.C., of course. Then the other part of this is there is a mobile educational center that offers that educational component too for visitors.
And I'd like to mention, for those who may have attended the recent ceremony there at our Veterans Memorial, there were some flags staked out in the park field out there that would show sort of the the area where it will be installed and will be in place out there. So it'll be easily accessible, and we think a lot of folks will definitely spend some time out there. But there's a compact period of time, so you need to be aware they won't be out there for weeks. It's about 4 days or 5 days or so, I believe. Yeah.
I think that's it. And, folks can look for details. We'll probably know more details about it, soonish, but they can go to garnernc.gov, which is the town's website. Also, there is a Facebook page specifically for this event installation.
Okay.
And it is, if you go to Facebook, it's just, I think it's The Wall That Heals Garner. If you do a search for that on Facebook, it'll bring up that page. And it's that page, I guess it's maintained by Tim Stevens.
I believe that's right.
So he posts updates on, as he gets them.
Sure.
And I think he's hoping to organize, some events around it arrives in town and is installed to have, maybe some sort of ceremony.
I think there'll be a ceremony. I think there's
Caravan.
possibly a short parade that will
kind
be
of a
done.
parade type
yeah,
event.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So just, keep your eyes and ears open for that, and you'll hear more about it. But Tim is a good contact, but you can certainly go to these online sites and get updated information as well, I'm sure.
So let's take just a few minutes and maybe look forward to the rest of this year, 2022. And, I think for us, a lot of it, we'll see continued growth. We'll have to continue to plan for that growth and for our bond projects, et cetera. Do you want to talk about some of that?
Sure. I always like to try to look ahead some. And so, I think you're exactly right, Rick. From an economic standpoint, I think we've come through the COVID era in pretty good shape. We understand that any number of our businesses have struggled, and certainly I'm pleased to see the federal government try to offer up some help, as has our state as well. But I think in terms of maybe some new businesses locating to the area, there's a place they can go to choosegarnernc.com, and also the Garner Chamber of Commerce that will probably have some information about new businesses or new employers coming to our town. So that's one thing I will mention. Also, I think you've alluded to this, but obviously the American Rescue Plan, it's a federal government program that is giving funds to most all of our municipalities, and Garner was a recipient of that. The rules and policies as to how you can spend those monies are sort of still being developed, even though they're sort of coming to a head now. And so we expect to be able to leverage those funds for some any number of things here, stuff that we still have to plan for and discuss. And again, our staff is helping lead and guide in that direction as well. But you'll be hearing more about that fairly soon, and we hope that we'll be able to use these funds for some very significant things that'll be positive for our town. We're also, you'll see, of course, more planning and design work, as you noted, on our major bond projects. That'll be part of the bond program that voters approved. So again, I didn't give you a time frame, but certainly during the coming year, you'll start to see evidence of that. And then, of course, we've already touched on COVID. We still have to remain vigilant as it relates to that, and we hope to be able to offer some special events and programming, obviously with the idea of keeping our citizens safe. We'll probably, from my perspective, need to be conscious of the basics, social distancing and wearing masks, particularly when you're in an inside setting. But we're not going to let that stymie things that we can do that citizens hopefully will be engaged in, and it'll continue to be a year, we believe, that's is going to be productive and positive, and we're going to do all we can to make it happen.
Yeah, and I think that is about it.
I mention just a couple of things?
There's a lot more we could talk about, but yes, certainly.
Yeah. I when I have an opportunity to speak to our citizens like this, two things I want to do. One is to to thank all of you for your encouragement and support of your town government. I know we don't do things that everybody always agrees with, but I can say to you that as mayor and as your town council, I think we're united in the idea that we want to do those things that we think are best for our citizens. We're always going to try to do that. And I encourage our citizens to stay engaged with their local government. I know any number of our people watch our council meetings on the government channel or they're streamed, I guess. Is it Facebook?
Facebook and now also YouTube.
Yeah, okay, YouTube. So I encourage you to stay engaged in that way. And, there are ways to be involved with your government in other ways. There are volunteer advisory committees that people can look to serve on, and any number of our citizens have served in that way. And so if you want to contact our clerk's office, our town clerk's office, they can give you some information in that regard. And so I would also say that, if you're serving in some capacity, continue to do that. If you're not serving in some capacity, I encourage you to consider that in terms of what would best utilize your talents and your abilities and those kinds of things. And so I say all of those things. Well, number one, I know a lot of our people are engaged civically in civic clubs and those kinds of things. People engaged in the faith community have a high respect for the positive impact they have as well. But I've learned during the time that I've been in public service, both as a council member and now as mayor, that, it really does take all of us working together. It's not something that you do this and I'll do that and the twain won't meet. It takes us all working together. And I think our town has a strong civic spirit. And so I encourage our citizens to continue that. It makes for good citizenship, for sure. So continue that, and certainly if the mayor can answer questions for you along the way, I'll do my best. But I have a very competent staff who are the experts, and so I usually refer many inquiries, even to people like Rick, who does a great job with our public information system, and Kyle, who's behind the scenes now working and helping film all of this. So a lot of good things going on. Hope 2022 you'll see some of the evidence of all that, and I encourage all of you to stay well, be well, and to find your place of service and get to it.
Well, that's a great way to finish up, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your service, and thanks for taking a little bit of your time. Or, I know you don't have a lot of time to give, but you were very gracious to be with us today for a little bit to talk about everything that's happening. And yeah, we definitely encourage folks to be engaged. Check out the website, garnernc.gov, follow us on social media, and look for ways to get involved. It doesn't necessarily literally have to be the municipal government, but, your faith community, a nonprofit. It does take us all working together to really make a great community. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. And that wraps up this edition of Garner Station podcast. You can watch this and all our other episodes at our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Town of Garner. And the podcast, the audio podcasts are available wherever you get your podcasts. So we'll talk to you next time on Garner Station. Take care.